Hello, my name is Daniel Regnier. I'm a philosopher and musician here in Saskatoon, and I'm really delighted to be part of this Threads conference. In fact, the metaphor of thread really resonates with the kind of instruments I'll be playing today, because I'll be playing a guitar, and the word tar actually means string in Persian. So we can see already a thread that has gone all the way from the Middle East into just about every musician's hand in the world. So that's just a kind of beautiful metaphor to work with. Today I'll be talking about wonder. Wonder, music, and intercultural understanding. Wonder is something that is thematized. It's made kind of a central notion in just about every religious and philosophical tradition, because it seems to represent something essential about human experience, human reality. And music has a special connection to that, I would suggest. The word wonder itself is a fascinating kind of concept, because it's a broad concept. And sometimes if concepts are too narrow, they don't allow us to express really important things to us. So what's beautiful about the concept of wonder is that it has to do both with a kind of sense of not knowing where my thumb is, for example, when I raise my hand, not knowing, of being curious about something that's beyond ourselves. It also has it contains within it the notion of appreciating, of seeing something that is wonderful. Right? So this is a beautiful concept, because it expresses our limitations and the fact that we can be happy and find joy in our limitations, because they make the world wonderful. Right? And so I kind of think that wonder can relate to our experience at various levels. We can be in wonder about ourselves, right? That's a big theme in many religious and philosophical traditions, is trying to understand ourselves, because we are always, to a certain extent, a mystery. We're always wonderful. We can look at that mystery and sometimes not feel so good about it, but if we're able to take the perspective of wonder, we can look deeper into ourselves and kind of feel like there's something to be discovered that's positive, and there's ways to go about discovering it. We'll see that that's one of the ways in which music can kind of help us with wonder, and I'll get to that in a minute. The other way, wonder also kind of relates us to nature and to the divine, right? The world around us is wonderful, and often, in our busy lives in the modern world, in our big cities, we don't take the time to kind of see the wonder in whatever, a blade of grass, an insect. Sometimes we have to see the world through the eyes of, say children, like my daughter, asking me about why the leaves change color and when that first flake of snow is going to fall and why. That kind of attitude towards nature and the beauty of the world around us is something that actually nourishes us if we're able to cultivate it. And music can do that sometimes too. The other level, so we've talked about the self as kind of being a source of wonder, nature, and the divine, let's say, the kind of what's beyond the human world as wonderful. And then also there's wonder in our relations with one another, the fact that we can look into the face of another person and just be fascinated by the fact that, there's so much to learn about others, that there's so much that they can offer to us in understanding the world and ourselves. So my suggestion is that music kind of works at all three of these levels. It's a way of exploring ourselves, It's a way of exploring our relationship to what's beyond ourselves, nature, the universe, God. And it's also a way of exploring our relationships with other people. Of course, I'm going to play alone here, but a lot of this music is really meant to be played in groups. So what I'd like to just touch upon right now is this idea of music as communication. We often say that music is like the universal language. But if you think about it, there's a lot of things music can't express like languages can, like where are my shoes? If I tried to play a song like that at home, it would take a long time to find my shoes. But music does some things, it communicates some things that language can't. And I think that's why we all agree at some level that music is a universal language, because it does communicate something, and it communicates something at that deep level of wonder, precisely where precision doesn't do the job, where we need something that's more expansive, right? So the first piece I'm going to play is going to be a kind of exploration of this idea of the self, an inward-looking exploration. It's called the soleá, which literally means, it's from the word soledad, which means loneliness or solitude. And it has some dark corners, but it also represents this idea that when you look close enough at what's inside you, you can see that it's beautiful too, even when it's, you know, kind of murky. And I thought it would be nice to just touch upon a famous little story told by Zhuangzi, who's a famous Taoist philosopher in China. He has these paradoxical little stories that are hard to interpret, partly because they go against the grain of a lot of our thinking nowadays. So for example, here's a story about the dream of the butterfly. He says something like, I woke up from dreaming that I was a butterfly. And for a moment, I didn't know if I was Zhuangzi, dreaming that I was a butterfly, or a butterfly, dreaming that I was Zhuangzi, right? And I think this is a beautiful story because it starts to say that, well, you know, our idea of this kind of solid core of selfhood is a bit of a myth, right? That to a certain extent, we can actually deconstruct our egos and our egotism and get beyond it and see the world from a different perspective by going deeper into the self, by going into our dream worlds, you know, see the world from the point of view of a butterfly. Take seriously this idea that within ourselves maybe there is something that is closer to butterflyness than we would normally think. Anyway, that's just a thought. I'll turn to the soleá. so in this next section, I want to talk about the connection with nature. The way that our let me just start again here. Right. So the idea of wonder is related to our wonder in the face of nature. There's a really beautiful account of a spirit quest by Douglas Cardinal, where he talks about his experience of going off into the wilderness and kind of fasting, praying, reflecting, and going through a number of kind of very strange experiences where he sees nature open up to him. He starts to be able to understand why it is that in many traditions, animals, the natural world around us, many things that we often would say are inanimate are actually, in a sense, persons that we can communicate with. That there's something behind the facade that we tend to see the world around us as being, right? So we can see in these indigenous worldviews practices and a culture of facing the world around us as an object, not even an object, as a place of wonder, as a realm of wonder. And you see this in many traditions. For example, there's also a wonderful tale by Ibn Tufayl, who was an Islamic philosopher and a Sufi mystic working in that wonderful period in the south of Spain. And he tells a story about a young man, a child actually, a feral child who goes off to an island, and the whole account is of the way that this young person naturally is drawn to the world around him in this case, and uncovers many of the secrets of philosophy, the secrets of spirituality, simply by pursuing this sense of wonder. We also get, in roughly the same period, a great Sufi mystic in the south of Spain by the name of Ibn Arabi. And he is known for really, when talking about the human capacities, the human faculties, he talks about the imagination. So much so that some scholars have wanted to talk about the mundus imagibilis, the imaginary world. And he talks about this world as being a place where the human and the divine kind of comes together in the realm of symbols, in the realm of art. And so we get that a little bit with, we get in the Islamic tradition a great interest in poetry, this notion that poetic language, the poetic approach to the world, which is a wonder approach to the world, is the one that is most adequate to revealing the truth. And for example, there's a connection with poetry and music, obviously. The famous first lines of Rumi's Masnawi are, listen to the ney. And the ney is this flute instrument, but it also means reed. So the translations will sometimes say flute, the translations will sometimes say reed, but of course in the original Persian it means both. And so this idea that the ney is a natural thing, but it's also a musical instrument, that music is kind of at the border between nature and the human, right? So that's just such a beautiful image. You see, of course, the ney is a central image in a central instrument in Turkish music, in Iranian music. But the oud is also an extremely important instrument in Turkey, Iran, and all of the Arabic countries. And it's a fascinating instrument because it is the grandfather of the guitar. The word oud became Europeanized in the word lute, right? Al-oud became lute, right? So we have a direct adoption of an Arabic instrument, an Arabic word, into European languages. And what's wonderful about the oud is that it's kind of like the guitar or the piano for Arabic musicians, right? For composing, you'll use your oud the same way that someone might compose a song and have their guitar in hand. And what's wonderful about oud is that there's a tradition of playing these improvisations. Right? They do that in much of Arabic music, and I think this is connected to this whole appreciation of imagination, of wonder, curiosity, exploration, the spontaneity of that sensation of wonder, this taking a risk, playing something without having planned it out. That's totally central in the Arabic music tradition. You see some of the great composers like Zakaria Ahmad or Muhammad Abdul Wahab. They're also great oud improvisers. They create these marvelous pieces, but they also have these recordings, thank heavens, of them sitting down and just letting this music pour out of their oud. And it's wonderful because it's always a surprise. It's a surprise even for the performer. So I'll try to give you a taksim. Taksim actually means like partition or section. They have sections, of course. They seem to be just a total spontaneous outpouring of music, but it is spontaneous outpouring, but it's a spontaneous outpouring where sometimes you jump to this mode or that mode. Maybe you'll catch where I kind of try to change a note here or there to take us to a slightly different atmosphere. So another, as we talked about at the beginning, another thing that's wonderful is relationships, and it's kind of it can work at a simple level. It's just so fascinating to be with your friends and hear what they'll say when they surprise you with their jokes. You know, there's always something that you don't expect with people, and it's always, even when it's not so great, like when my kids come home from school and they're not happy or something like that. There's always some possibility for wonder, saying, hey, well, let's look deeper, let's look closer at that problem with the math test, if it is simple as that. But of course, Arabic and Spanish music is very social. In fact, many of us are really used to kind of Western classical music, where people sit silently on the one hand, and on the other hand, there's people on stage. But there's a tradition in Spanish music of people shouting along, because of these things called jaleos, where they shout out, they express their immediate sense of connection or wonder. And you actually get that with the oud. On the old recordings of those great oud masters, you'll hear in the background, especially from Egypt, that people say Allah, or they'll say God. Like what they're saying, they're invoking the presence of the divine there and praising God because of the beauty of music. It becomes a way of praising together in community. And so you get that transformed in Spanish music. They'll say ole, which is actually, it's derived from the Arabic. Of course, maybe they pronounced it in their way and they don't necessarily understand where the word came from nowadays, but it's a direct borrowing. And in any case, it shows this kind of sense that music is a communal experience where we get together and we try to create an atmosphere, we communicate, things happen. And so we have this genre in flamenco called bulería, which actually comes from the word for joke. It's supposed to be a fun back and forth. The idea is to create the unexpected a little bit. There's often hand clapping and silly dancing that goes along with this genre of music. And so we'll play a little bit of it here. It's not the same thing when you don't have people clapping and stomping their feet, but you might still get a little bit of a sense of the kind of the joy and the communicative lightness that goes along with this piece. So here we go.
Bye.